What up? Thank you everybody for tuning in once again. You're now tuned into the Activated Podcast. I'm your host, Ibu. And today I'm really going to get into some conversation. I got a good friend of mine that's in here with me right now. And I will introduce him in a little bit. But today, essentially, what we want to talk about entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurs out there, a lot of y'all want to start your own business. You want to, be inspired to do great things. And, a lot of us always say, 9 to 5 is not for me. And some of y'all really should stick to 9 to 5 because also having your own business might not be for you. But today we're having our conversation, and hopefully at the end of this podcast, you're able to pick up some things. As I always say, if you're able to pick up one thing in everything that I say in the podcast, then, I'm out here. I'm just doing my part. So today I have a good friend of mine, Shed.
Hello, guys. My name is Shed.
And Shed has his own business. He has a renovation and a painting company called GoldenTouch.
Yep.
And before we even get into that, I'm gonna give a little bit of background how we know each other, right? Just so people kind of understand our dynamics. We met back when we were in high school.
Yep. I believe this was in grade 11.
No, it was 12th grade.
Grade 12, yep.
12th grade when we went to Harold Brathwaite in Brampton, and we were on the football team together.
Right.
And I think our first conversation we had, because I got into a fight with this fat kid. I don't even remember his name.
Yeah.
But I was coming out of the locker room and dude just hit me from the back, and if you know me, you know that didn't go too well.
Yep.
So and I think through that scuffle, you had come, and that's when you had just moved from Atlanta.
Yeah, I just came here from Atlanta. I was actually walking down the hallway, going to the back to practice the field. And then I kind of knew he was American because the way he walks. And I'm like, this is my people, right? And, he's a knuckleheaded guy, right? So he's trying to fight a guy. He's almost twice his size at the time. And I think I bumped into each other, and I kind of came in between. I said, hey, what's going on? You can't fight first practice. What's going on? We got to be a team. So from then on, we kind of connected. I heard his accent. I'm like, hey, where you from? Maryland. Oh, I'm from Atlanta. So things just kind of went on from there.
And I think at first, too, that was our mutual ground, was that we came from, we grew up and came from the U.S. So that was kind of like how we... one thing we had in common, and then our friendship started, it built from there. And like I said, we've known each other almost 10 years now.
Almost 10 years, correct. Yeah.
And we both worked together and went separate ways. And also with that, and you even when we were in high school, you used to work with your uncle.
Right.
Rest in peace to Uncle Peter.
Yep.
And he had I believe a renovation company, right?
He had a renovation company. So in between, while I was in school on the weekends, I would have to work with him. As you know, most people from African background, you know how it is. You got to get a job, you got to support with the rent. So my part of paying rent was I had to work for my rent. So I would work for free and not get paid. So, which was a little bit quite unusual for most people working part time. And then that was kind of my way of contributing to the house. But, it gave me some life skills as I went along.
So is it safe to say Uncle Peter he's running some games? Or? But honestly, rest in peace to him. Like, it was amazing to do. Whenever we would see him, he always offered us a drink.
Right.
He was despite what that was, he was definitely, like, you could just sense that he was a good...
He was a good dude.
He was a good dude, and to be honest with you, you learn from that situation, and that's probably what initially started to plant that entrepreneurship.
Right. So I learned the life skills from him. He was a hardworking guy, and despite him being a little harsh on me when I was a little younger, but I gained some life skills from that, and that came into play later on in my life, which I'll talk about shortly. During that time, I just came to Toronto, and I was living with him in Brampton at the time. Right. Came to Harold Brathwaite. We met Ibu. Since then, we've been pretty tight throughout high school. We had a couple other friends, but our relationship was a little bit one of those that we always had each other's back. Yeah. No matter what we went through in life, to a point where, he went to college, he kind of inspired me in a way He was the first to go to college amongst my friends. So we all graduated high school. You know how it is when you're 18 years old, 17-year-old, you graduate high school. You're thinking, what do I do next? Some guys are working in the warehouse. Some guys are working in McDonald's. He was one of the first guys out of my group to actually, he went to, I believe, Humber College or Sheridan College.
Right.
He did architecture and, so I fed off that. You know what I mean? A lot of black kids these days, everybody want to go into basketball. People want to go into rapping and doing things that very little chance of you making rather than going to school and actually learning something. So,
but it was funny that we did rap. We did make a couple songs.
Right.
Because I used to love the one thing about rapping that I used to, and it was a very long time ago. Obviously, I don't do no more, but it was something about sitting there and creating something, and then you could later go on and enjoy. We did one song.
We did all of that. We did all that, play ball, and we did the music. But at the same time, we had a separate life where we knew we wanted to gain something out of life, which is just get into a career, right? So most people, what they do is they stop. They want to put all their eggs in one basket. You were in school while we were doing this.
Right.
And later on, I think a year or two after you graduated, that was when I went to back to school and I did civil engineering. So we had always had things going on for us, and I guess that was what kept us to, our relationship to be a little bit stronger because we had aspiration for life, right? So definitely, those were good times. So moving forward in life, we lived together, rented a place. I don't know if you remember, by York,
of course,
the village.
I was thinking about it today. What do we call it? Playboy Palace.
Playboy.
So whenever people would come over, they were like, "Yo, what's your Wi-Fi password?" I'm like, "Playboy Palace." They were like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah, that's what it was." And we had some of the most amazing house parties.
Oh my goodness.
From which we cannot talk to about on this podcast, but just so we have a lot of history together. But a little bit, just to go back. So the company that you currently own. So right now you own two companies.
So I own two companies. So before we get into it, the Golden Touch, the Golden
name.
Touch, yeah.
How did you come up with that? Because you know what, I'm looking at it like I'm trying to figure it out. Like Golden Touch, I figure you would, So let us know. Like, how did you come up with that with the name Golden Touch?
So I'll backtrack to so after I finished high school, he went up to college. I wasn't seeing him as much. I had at the time I left my uncle's house. And pretty much like being kicked out of the house. When you're at a certain age, you can't follow some rules. So I was living on my own. Then I was 19 at the time. So I went through a stage in my life where I was working. I don't know if you remember, I was working at a grocery store.
Longo's.
Okay, so yeah. I was working at Longo's and I was doing night shift. So every time I come home, I was always depressed and I just needed something more in life, but I didn't want to go to school at the time because I didn't really know what I wanted, right? So, and I was laying down in my bed and I was looking at the ceiling and I'm thinking to myself, what can I do right now? And I needed money at the time. So then what can I do right now to make quick cash? And you guys know I'm Nigerian. A lot of Nigerian people get into scams.
Shout out to Nigeria. I mean, that's another too. Like the stigma about obviously about the fraudulent activity.
Right.
But I mean, that wasn't your thing though. Like
no.
Your thing was always, you was always definitely like I'm handy. Mm-hmm. But I'm not passionate about making money
with your hands.
With my hands,
right.
I like to think. I'm a thinker. Like I feel like if I want to get dirty, I hit the gym. Like I won't sweat. But that's just And I would say everybody have to figure out what they really good at and really use that. So
right.
That is so. When you did leave in the basement, that's when you came up with the name.
So so I was laying in my bed. I looked in the ceiling. And I said, I need to do something other than just working at this job before I go to school. So, and I remember my uncle used to always tell me, "You're a good painter." He always told me, "You're a great painter." Of all the skills that I learned from him, he always pointed out I was a good painter. And I said, okay, I need to start a company. Let me try it out. So what I did was I went to the library. I printed a flyer that says painting. At the time, I didn't have a name, so I went to people's doors and I started knocking on the door. I said, "Hey, I can paint your room for $100." And they're like, "Whoa, $100? Yeah." So they
bet you won't do that again.
so they
$100 for a whole room.
Hey,
Boy, right now it'll be a difference. Okay, so
in,
that's how the whole thing
in
started.
inflation has changed for sure. But anyways, so I got into the first job and I made $100. It took me about 3 hours to paint the room. So I'm thinking to myself, wow, if I can make $100 in 3 hours, people don't make that, right? So that it kind of that business side of me came out right away instantly, and then I knew that going back in I had to make business card, and I'm thinking, what name should I call this company? Right. And then the first thing that came to my mind was Golden, and I said I was going to call it Golden Brush. I said Golden Brush, it sounds too GoldenTouch, and I had so much name. I love the name Gold, and it sounds really rich, and it has a lot of richness to the actual name itself. So I started called GoldenTouch Painters, and then as soon as the name was established, I was able to get it registered. At the time, I wasn't fully registered. I just got business cards and whatnot. So
I mean, just like I think whatever at the very beginning,
right?
It's costly to like get and start to register things. So of course you got to just get your foot in the door.
So that was how it started, and I started making business cards at Staples and handing them out, going door to doors, and that was how it kicked off. And I started getting contracts. And surprisingly, I actually did well that summer. That was the summer before I went to school. So, and then when I went to school, things kind of slowed down a little bit. So going back to school, I was able to learn a little bit more into the field of construction, and which I studied as civil engineering.
So now, now we get the name, and now I wanted to ask you, when you first started your business,
right?
What is the costliest mistake that you've done? And I have a story as we're talking about it, because at some point you and I we wanted to do it together.
Yeah.
And then I met the devil in disguise. So I'm gonna tell y'all the story. I went to this lady house. So what it was at the time, you couldn't move as quick as you wanted to. I think you weren't driving. Something was going on with that. So I was like, you know what? I would go and do the estimation, and then we could break bread that way, and that way I could learn the business. And in some way, shape, or form, we're trying to merge those two together. As I study architecture, so we wanted to do like some design renovation kind of company.
Right.
So I went to this lady's house. This is in Toronto, probably one of the higher end neighborhood. We're talking around Bayview. If you're familiar with Toronto, you should know where that is. So we went to this lady's house, and we went in there. We did the estimation. I remember I was back and forth with you on the phone because, like I said, this is like my first time coming and doing. I was all dressed up, so she let me in. I talked to her. I'm pretty good at talking to people, but I think at the time I didn't understand the business fully because I've never actually done it. So I gave her an estimate that was way lower than what it should have been. And to this day, I'm telling you, whenever I see a wall with sand finish on it, I know what the business is. So essentially, I think I remember this. I quoted her about $800 for something that should have cost her $2,000,
around $2,000.
So I think when she did realize, oh, this is cheap, she decided to go with us.
Right.
So then he called me back. So I'm excited. I'm like, yo, we're gonna do this. We're gonna get this money. And then it was the job from hell. And I think that's probably one of the reasons when I realized, like, it's cool to get in business, but it has to be, number one, something that I'm passionate about, but something that I also have some sort of knowledge going into it.
And experience too as well, right?
What ended up happening is I think for that job, I broke even, thankfully. I didn't lose money, but me and you had to do a 10-hour shift.
We had to do a 10-hour shift.
I even took the day off from my regular job. I took a day off from my regular job. I've been there. And the funny thing is the next day was my birthday.
Wow.
So I was in there with a clean haircut, full of dust. You know what I mean?
Hey, we actually have a picture. I think you should post that up on the podcast.
I probably would. I will find that picture. Thank you for reminding me. So that's when I realized, you know what? That was a costly mistake. So to kind of piggyback off of that, do you remember, outside of that story, going into, like, what is your first big mistake that almost made you walk away from the business almost? Do you remember any story like that?
Yeah, I think that experience that we had together, it's something that is really common in the industry. Yeah. And that's what usually make or break people. I'm sure from your experience since then, you probably haven't touched a paintbrush before.
Listen, if it was my business, I would have walked there. I would have walked away.
You have to have a very tough backbone, and that's what that's one thing I want to tell for those who are trying to get into entrepreneurship, having your own business. You really, really have to have a really tough backbone, because what happens is you're going to be dealing with all sorts of people, and in the world, people are always looking for a way to rip you off. Especially as a black man and a black woman, you will be stepping into stages where everybody around you and the business owners, they're all white, so you're competing against white people, and people are always looking for a way to screw you up. So that was actually my third experience like that, when we did that job
So
together.
that was a walk in the park for you.
For me, that was nothing, right?
No,
So
and I'll be honest with you. To kind of give you a little bit more background to the story. So the first day we showed up,
right,
we had painters that we hired,
right,
and then they supposed to, we calculated that should be a 1 day job.
1 day job, right?
So everything was supposed to be done. So when I got there, and then the painter that we hired started saying, "Nah, like we need to sand the walls.
Right.
It's a whole day. It's added cost and things like that."
Right.
When I left, because I went to introduce him to the lady, and then I left. So while I left, the lady was telling him, "Listen, y'all don't need this guy. I'm willing to pay y'all to do the job." But I also think those guys, also, I think to some extent, they weren't as honest as they claimed to be.
Right.
Because I think if the lady offered them enough money, they would have definitely undercut me and did the job. But they didn't do that. And that day I worked, I couldn't even get any work done because they would call me every 5 minutes. This lady changed the paint color 6 times.
Right.
She wanted, instead of, we offered her a double coat, which is, I think that's the standard.
That's the standard, right?
Like it comes to standard, and if you want more, that's probably more.
She wanted
money.
like 4 coats, right?
Yo, we did like 6, my G. Like we was in there. I sanded.
So
I'll be honest with you. It's amazing to me that people want to go into the business of owning their own company and things like that, but they don't need. Sometimes they can't even start to understand how much work it is. And I always tell people, sometimes the experience is the best teacher in life.
Right.
And you could definitely learn from somebody. As I'm telling y'all the story today, and you want to do your own business, think about it. You can listen to our story right now and realize you can actually learn from what we didn't.
Right.
We had nobody to tell us, really.
And you saying that, it doesn't necessarily have to be the same experience. In any business, there's going to be some difficulties that you're going to be going through. That was just as an example of, and that's something really small. We're talking about hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars. I actually did a project. This is about 4 years after that. I got a bigger projects, and I'm dealing with, clients that are in the commercial industry. Right. We're doing a warehouse in Scarborough. So this job has been going on for about a year, and, it's so many changes. When you start dealing with jobs that are $20,000, $30,000, when you make, a mistake that is about 10% of the contract, you're not talking, $800 no more, right? So you're talking about, $5,000, $6,000 that you got to eat, and you have workers you got to pay. So definitely it's, you have to have a really, really strong work ethic. And that was something I had to pick up from the get-go, despite whatever project you're going through, you have to be able to stay through the end. So sometimes you might have to lose money, but you've learned from your mistake. And sometimes it costs for you to lose that money. Any business you get into, you're going to come to a point where it's a make or break situation. You got to make decisions, whether you're going to walk away. If you walk away, you're losing a good chunk and possibly being sued, right? So I had to learn from that little job, right?
Now, sorry, not to cut you off, but in terms of now, when you're putting these contracts together,
right?
Is there room for mistakes? Like, is it a small portion that is there as a contingency plan? Yeah,
so we have a deficiency plan. I actually make that up myself. So we also call it waste factors, right? So what happened is I write up the contract personally. Like I said, I have a background I went to school for civil engineering, and I went to school for construction engineering management. So I have those diplomas in my back pocket. So throughout my course in school, I actually learned a lot about contract and how to write up contract, how to deal with these people.
How to do the tenders and things like that.
And this is another thing I would say, people who's trying to start a business, you got to do researches, you got to educate yourself, because there's a lot of things that you don't learn on the job if you are not educated enough to withstand whatever you go through. So those courses really, 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 really helped me. or else I would have been screwed by these guys. A lot of the time you're dealing with big contractors who have lawyers and millionaires that they can afford to screw you over, and they'll feel no ways about it. So what I had to do is I write up the contract and make it very clear. I have to make sure I have a contract on every job. This is to save us and to save the client. So that's number one thing, is having contract and writing up the contract very clear. Make sure there's no miscommunication between you and the client. And when money is involved, people will do anything they can to pay less. And right.
So the good thing you're saying about the contract, going into business, even if, for example, today somebody wants me to come and, I don't know, host whatever it is, like somebody wants to hire me, I understand that, there has to be a contract, but I think the contract is only as good as its enforcement. So you might have a contract early on, but you don't have the finances to pursue these people. Right. So what do you do in those instances?
So usually what I do is I had to, honestly, a lot of my jobs, every day is a new experience for me. With the business, the good thing about in the industry that I'm in is that I actually know how to do the job myself. So a lot of people get into contract and renovation company, and they have no clue on how to do the work. So if you don't know how to do the work, so pretty much it's like you get the contract, you hire a subcontractor to work for you. So you're the middleman. Right. So the client pays you, you pay the subcontractor. So when things go wrong, the communication gets broken down, and it's like a broken telephone. The contractors want, the homeowner wants certain things done a certain way. Your subcontractors are doing it the wrong way. So now you're in the middle, and you're the guy that is losing money. You have to pay the workers, and then you got to get paid from the customer. So what happened is, with me, I've been lucky enough that I actually know my trade pretty well. I'm actually in the process of getting my red seal in painting, which is really good. It's the highest qualification in painting. So I really knew my painting well. So a lot of the time when things hit the fan, I will actually do the job myself. So you'll have to rather than losing money, I'm saving the money that is not even coming in to begin with, right? So,
and I think that's kind of like, to go back to our story, is that's what we had to do. We had to go in there and work for 10 hours.
Right.
At no cost. And I mean, we broke even because of that, because if we have to pay somebody to go fix this lady's wall, and the funny thing is, after we put in about 10 hours that day, the lady texts me the next day 3 pictures. And she was saying, so when you coming back to fix it? The reply I was going to give her, it wasn't a very nice one. And I might still have that picture, but essentially after we go above and beyond, we put 6 painter coats, everything else, she still texts us the next day and go, "Oh, you guys missed 3 spots, you should come back." And I was like, "Lady, you paid us $800. Like this is the and I pray for everybody to never have a client like her ever cross your path, because I'm telling you, you'll be sitting there and think about, why do I ever even got into business?" But I want to jump on a different topic real quick. Yeah. So you started the business, and then at the time you had a job. Like you had a full-time job that you was doing, and you was kind of managing both the full-time job and the business.
Right.
So at some point, me and you, I remember we had this conversation right before you went through, and you were kind of, inquiring with me, saying, I want to do this, but my not to say your family wasn't supportive, but it's like everything else. Everybody's kind of scared of the unknown,
right?
So everybody was saying, "Listen, you went to school, you got this degree or whatever. Right. You're already working, you're making. Why do you want to go and start painting and do things and gamble?" And then when we had a conversation, I remember telling you, at the time, how old were we? This is like 4 years ago, right?
Yeah, we were like around 22, 23.
And I was like, I remember telling you, I was like, "Listen, you try this business. If it doesn't work, you come back and get your regular job."
Right.
And I told you, you know what? Like, you have the momentum going. You should go into that full force.
Right.
And how important do you think that conversation was to pushing you to actually, you know what, I'm doing this? Because and I'm gonna let you get into it a little bit. It's almost, when I first came up with the idea, I'm gonna start a podcast.
Right.
And I remember having a conversation with my sister about it.
Right.
She told me two things. She told me you have nothing to lose, and she told me I see a talent in you.
Right.
And I mean, that could just be words, but I think coming from my sister, I was like, you know what? If you believe in it,
Right.
fuck it.
Yeah.
We just gonna jump off the plane with no parachute. Like we have to go through this. So tell us a little bit your thought process leading up to that, making that decision from now going from a secure paycheck
Right.
to now gambling everything and putting it on the line.
So with businesses, you're always taking risk, right? That was one thing I had. That was probably one of the toughest moments in my life. Where so pretty much the background of this story was, after I graduated school, I got a great job working for an engineering company, and I was making really good money, above average what Canadians make. So I had to make a decision where I was doing my business on the side at the time. I was able to save up some money from my working full time on my regular job. And it came down to a situation where I had to make a decision whether to pursue my business full time or to stay working where I'm okay. I had no reason to leave. The company treated me good. I was making really good money. I was in a position of buying the property at the time. So I had to make a decision where I had to start my business. My business was doing well, not the greatest, but it was doing well. And with business, as you guys all know, it's all risk. One day you could be up there, next day you could be down low, and there's nothing you can do about it. So I had some conversation with some people, my family, and some people said, "Oh, why would you do that? You just got this job. It's a great job. You're making so much money. Why would you even think about leaving?" And I got a lot of negative people, trying to tell me not to leave, and but the only thing that I knew in myself was I had to believe in myself. And after speaking to Ibu, he was probably one of the most influential conversation I had in terms of making that decision at the time. And he said, hey, just go with your heart, because if you don't make it, you can always come back. And, and that stuck in my mind. So it was a leap of faith I took. I took a lot of chances, and, I saved up enough money. I was able to start my business full force. And, obviously there's ups and downs, when you're in the downs, people are going to say, "Oh, you see, I told you should have went back." Finances is probably one of the biggest thing when it comes to business. You have to have enough money. You got to, sometimes when I get some contract, I don't even know when the next job is coming. So these things are things that you have to take into consideration if you are looking to get into your business. You have to be really hardworking. Your work ethic has to be, above, excellent. You have to be able to push yourself to the limit. And that was one of the best decisions I ever made, was starting my own business. And, it worked out. I mean, despite the up and downs, I never give up. Just working hard, giving it all you got. Like when Ibu told me he started this podcast, I was actually excited without even hearing the podcast, because I knew he was going to do well, because I know the kind of person he is, and he's a hard worker, and without a doubt, I had no question in my mind that is. So there are people that it's for some people, and then there are some people that don't have. If you don't have, having to wake up at 6 a.m. to get things planned out for yourself, you won't be able to do it. If you just, some people are comfortable doing regular job, and it's not for everyone, right? So I'm glad I made that decision, and despite what I went through, I still had that that drive in me, and I was able to we've been doing really well actually. So.
And you said very interesting just now, and I was actually going to ask you about it, but since you brought it up, we'll jump right to it. Entrepreneurship.
Right.
Is it for everybody? Like, do we all have it in us? And I also have a theory that, if we all got businesses, then who are we hiring to do these things? And this is not to shoot down anybody's dream or ability. And I would say you have to tap into your greatest assets.
Right.
So if your greatest asset is maybe speaking, you tap into that.
Right.
If your greatest asset is, like I said, my shout out to my boy, every time I will move, he will come help me move. And I told him, you can start a moving company.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, and it comes down to that, like, and sometimes you see people almost, now when we talking on this podcast, it's actually some behind the scenes that I thought about for about 2 years, right? And it's a lot of work that goes behind, even coming to the point where we're able to come up in and speak about it. And the reason why I love this, because, just like me, we might seem average to everybody, and average is not to take away it's not to undermine that word, but like I said, a lot of times, and I will keep driving this point, is we are locked in thinking that because we are not popular,
Right.
then we're not doing
Not
amazing
doing well.
things
Right.
within our own rim. And like I said, the inspiration comes from, as friends, we're able to inspire each other
Right.
early. And like, you know what I'm saying, like everything, a lot of things that's happening now, it's like, I remember when you wanted your first laptop.
Right.
I don't know if you remember this.
Yeah.
Your first laptop, you came to me like, yo, I got some little money in the bank. I want to, you know what I mean? And I was like, listen, here's the laptop that I got for school.
Yeah.
Let's try to figure this out. What is it? A blue Gateway, whatever it was.
Gateway. Yep.
And so much history, so much story we might be able to get into, but it's like from the very beginning, I knew that, you know what? We can inspire each other. And now because, I don't want to say I'm all the way there, but I'm starting to be conscious about a lot of things. I'm like, we have a lot of people in the community that are doing amazing things.
Right.
And if you have the ability to come just share that story and somebody could pick up one thing,
Absolutely.
then we are definitely doing our job. So, and also another thing, and we probably just skipped this, but it's okay. We'll get back to it. How important is it? Because now you're in a position that you're doing better financially,
Right.
and how important is it to give back to your community? Because I think it's not about just starting a business,
Right.
being successful, and of course your family benefits from that.
Right.
And of course, obviously now you're a family man, you got wife, kids, and obviously they are your priority. But bigger than just thinking outside of just what your immediate impact is, how important is it to impact our community?
Yeah, I think it's very important because there are people that have been in our shoes before in the past, right? Especially the younger generation. Just to, I've actually started impacting, other people, especially in my chain family line. So like my little cousins, I'm always they look up to me actually, and I'm always telling them, hey, this is how you guys have seen how I live my life, and there's no shortage of I could have used excuses. I couldn't do it because of this. So how I try to impact the community is just pretty much just telling people my story, one, and two, I'm always trying to get involved in social activities going on, especially in the local area. I actually did a promotion for a boxing. The Fraser family. I don't know if these guys. They went to.
You know what? I did. I seen a. I think I seen a flyer, and I was like, "What's going on?" So I said, we don't get to talk as much as we used to, but
right. So
I happened to see it on Instagram.
Yeah, so I actually helped with the promotion. It's a boxing event for the youth. So I've been helping with promotion and just giving some funds to help with the production and the awareness. Just being involved in the community, especially in the Black African American community. I'm actually working on the platform to actually have some sort of like a what am I going to say, like the what is it called?
To maybe trying to
like a workshop, right?
Okay.
So like a workshop where I can have kids come together and actually get their hands on even if it's renovation, framing, and just to give kids the option to see what they might like doing. Because when I was in school, we never had the option to try things out. A lot of people are actually good at certain trade, they just don't know because they've never done it. So in near future, my goal is to actually set up workshop, be able to finance some sort of program for the youth, the younger generation, to let them know that, hey, if this is what you want to get into, there's opportunities out there, look at my stories and be able to share that with people.
And how about like a yearly barbecue family date event?
Right.
Like to just kind of celebrate and to come back. I like to look at it. I mean, obviously we've through Motherland ENT, and for those of y'all that are not familiar with it, this is a promotional company that I actually didn't even start it. I came on. I was the last piece to that puzzle.
Right.
But you could look that up. Motherland ENT. We've done a lot of partying and things like that.
Right.
And I remember one day we were having a conversation amongst each other, and I was like, guys, we should do a thank you barbecue every year, because at the time we were able to do about 5, 6, 7 parties, whatever, throughout the year. And I know at first the idea sounded stupid because we're not even making that much money and things like that. But I always say, you know what? If you don't give money at your lowest,
Right.
you're not gonna give it when you're making the most. So
Absolutely.
if you're not the type of person that would do things just because without expecting anything in returns, when you have nothing, it really becomes a lot more difficult when you are in a position to impact and you just you don't care because nothing affects you directly.
Right.
So you're not willing to give back. Like you're not connected with the community. And I think right now that's why we create a platform. This is for us to be better. And when I mean us, I mean everybody all together. It's all about also becoming better citizen to the world.
To the world,
and not just to where you're from. Like if it's Nigeria or Niger, or shout out to Niger. Make sure you recognize when you hear a Niger man speaking on the mic. But it's not just about those communities that impact us, but it's like if we're a better citizen to our community, our neighborhood, and hopefully that energy gets out there and we have a safer, not even safer, but just a better world to live in. And not for us, because I don't know if you heard the first podcast, I was talking about the rule of 90.
Right.
The rule of 90 is if you live to 90 years, being 28 years old right now, I used up 50% of my time. Meaning I'm 50% there. So, and if you've not heard that, please tune into the first episode, Chase Your Dream. It's up right now. But I kind of explained that. So I think that's when propelled me into going, you know what? Mm-hmm. Outside of just, benefiting or making money and that type of stuff, I think it's very important that we start to plant those seeds and give back to the community. And hopefully we create a better space for not us, but for the people after us. Because it's not about consumption while we're here, because it's like, we consume everything and then we don't leave nothing for the people that are coming.
Yeah, right.
Now, you're a married man.
Yep.
He thinking, oh boy, what I signed up.
I've been married for 2 years now, happily married.
There you go. Speak the truth, brother. She listening to it. I mean, he looks very, very happy. I ain't gonna lie to you, but I'm gonna leave you alone on that.
For those of you that haven't seen me in a while, you can tell I've put on some weight. That's usually the first thing when you get married. Everybody's you gain weight. You be eating too much. What is she feeding you and all this?
Is that what it is? Listen,
hey, it's a marriage thing.
Oh, when you get okay. So. I mean, I think marriage is a beautiful thing. And by the way, congratulations on that.
Yeah.
I was the best man at your wedding.
Yeah.
And I remember I was in the club. Because, see, right now what's happening is you're becoming more righteous. Right. And I'm sort of still on the ratchet side. So I was in the club the day before his wedding, before Shed's wedding, and he texted me at 3 a.m. He was like, hey, bro, I know it's last minute, but we need you to give a speech at the wedding the next day. So you got to think about it. I'm in the club. I'm turned up. A little alcohol in the system. And I'm thinking, now, how are you going to drop this on me? And the wedding was 9 o'clock the next day. This is 3 in the morning. So I got up there and I might say I gave an incredible speech. I'm still looking for the footage. I think they sent it to me. And I mean, there's a little extra story for y'all to really listen to. But what I wanted to ask you was that how do you balance the work life, wife life, and this entrepreneurship journey that you're on? Like, how hard is it? Because I know with you is like being an entrepreneur really means that if you don't work, you don't get paid.
Right.
Like some of us that got regular jobs, right?
Right.
We got sick days.
Right.
We got, we got vacation. And I think for me in the past 6-7 years, I've not missed a paycheck through the jobs that I had because I was, a full-time employee or whatever that is.
Right.
Whether I show up, I get paid. When I'm sick, I get paid. How is that balancing, the family life and entrepreneur? Like, just give us a little bit of that.
So first of all, entrepreneurship is that what that means, a lot of people don't know. The real definition of that is that, first of all, when you start your own business, you're going to be your own accountant. You're going to be your own project manager. You're going to be your own sales guy. You're going to be your own, delivery guy. You're going to be your own worker. You're going to be your own supervisor. You're going to be your own marketing director. You're going to be your own. So there's so many aspects to it when you're one guy running a company, and it takes a lot out of you. And a lot of people don't know that you have to have a really tough skin. And that, being able to translate into my marriage life, and I'm happily married, and I'm happily married. I'm actually happy about that. It's you got to balance life. Everything is all about planning and scheduling, because at the end of the day, there's 24 hours in a day. You decide what you do with that, right? So I work a lot. I work about, probably more than an average person. I work about 10 to 12 hours every day. I put in a lot of hours, because when you own a business, especially in the first 5 years, you will have to dedicate a lot of your time. So if you're single out there, this is the best time to start your business, right? So
don't start it when you're married, is what you're saying, or that business might not make it.
It's a little tougher when you're married and you're starting your business, but not everyone can do it. A lot of that happened because I'm a Christian. I give my life to Christ, and all that tied in into at the same time, while I had given my life to Christ, I got married to my beautiful wife, and the business was going on at the same time. These all happened around the same time while I was making decision between starting the business or having to to work full time. So, and the transition has been really good. I would say the best thing to do when you're in this situation is you have to be very organized, and you have to be self-driven. If you're someone that you have to be told what to do all the time, then you probably won't do well. So it's all about just working hard and scheduling, and set a reminder. On my phone, my schedule and my reminder is probably the most important thing on my cell phone. It's just always being alert, just knowing there's a customer who's waiting for you at 3 p.m. There's a job that is getting completed at 4 p.m. You got to go home, bring the milk to the wife at 7 p.m. And, it's such a busy life, and I actually love it. You have to be kind of, built for it. It's not for everyone, but, I know there are some people out there that could handle it. So it's actually the best, if you're single and, there's no need for you to waste your time, trying looking for a motive if you really want to start a business and you're single, you have so much time, you can do so much more. This doesn't mean when you're married you can't do it, you can still do it, but just know you got to be willing to work a little harder.
And I think too, I think it's easier because as you don't have to ask other people's schedule. You just get up and you get it done.
Right.
Just to paint the picture, today we're recording this on a Sunday, and it's 11:45.
Yeah.
So just and we're trying to do this couple for the whole week.
We've had like
your
three
schedule is hectic.
yeah.
My schedule is hectic, but you know what I mean. And sometimes this is what it will take. So
right.
Keeping in mind, like I said, for me, obviously I only got to worry about myself for now, but it's definitely. So you guys take. I'm sure you'll be like, you know what, next month, we gotta take the kids to Granny,
right.
and go on a
little getaway,
on a getaway together.
Yeah, I actually just came back from Niagara Falls on a marriage retreat with my church. It was great. So we do things like these consistently. And, I've been married for 2 years. I don't have the most experience, but this is also to advise for those, who are married or who are thinking about getting married. You have to create time for your spouse. And it's great, all the work and everything. At the end of the day, you still got to go home to them, and you want to make sure you have a, happy marriage, and, just creating that time. You always have time for, even if it's an hour in a day, right? So there's, like I said, there's 24 hours on the clock. You work 10 hours, you sleep 6 to 7 hours, right? So this all is what you allocate your time to, right? So I think it's very important that we try to, create some time for each other.
That's good. Now I want to ask you a marriage question.
All right. Here we go.
Being that you're the married guy, off the top of your head, what is when somebody says marriage, name the best thing, and trying to see if you can find the worst thing. Now, Raquel, this is the time. If you're listening, please turn it off. You know what I mean? Turn it. Just give us. This is man to man talk. Because you know what? I like to, like I said, whenever people are married,
right.
I definitely I like to ask them questions,
right?
Just to kind of get my I don't want to say get my head around it, but I've heard that smart men learn from other people's mistakes. So not to say, of course, that right. You're making mistakes, but it's like if you're able to tell me something, maybe there's something that I could, at some way, shape, or form navigate around. So
right.
one thing that you love about marriage? One thing that you hate?
Yeah, so I think the best thing I love about marriage is just having a partner. It's like a second hand, right? So just knowing that there's always a support no matter what you do in life. Sometimes if you're going through the ups and you're going through the downs, you always know she's got your back and she's always home waiting for you. And you might have the worst day in the world, and when you come home, you always know she's there for you. And that's, to me, I know everybody's different. To me, that's probably like the most important thing. She helps me as a person, as a man. Every man needs a woman to be there by their side to give them that extra push, right? In terms of the worst thing, um, I can't really pinpoint that. I'll probably say
he's not.
I'll probably say for me.
Don't worry about it. I'm gonna get the answer offline. I'm gonna let y'all know.
Off records, yeah.
If you can see Shed right now, he is sweating buckets. Shout out to you, Raquel. Like I said, so I mean, we'll stick with the positive, and I think that's a good thing. Having it's very important to have somebody there that no matter what, they'll be able to support. And like I said, sometimes it's a little bit of that last push that you might need.
Right.
You know that once you're going out there, you're fighting for somebody and for your family and kids, which is an amazing goal. Now, as we're getting towards the end of this podcast, and man, I'm loving this conversation. One thing I want to ask you though.
Yeah.
What is the end goal? Like, you started a business.
Right.
You turned it into two businesses.
Right.
You're gaining traction. You're being successful. You're having your family. But when it's all said and done, what is the end goal?
So pretty much for me, I actually started the painting, and then later on, we switched up to renovation because we got so busy, and we had a lot of clientele that we're looking into into us doing some more than just painting. So we actually offer full renovation. So we do home additions. So if you are investors out there, you're looking to get into, so we're actually looking to get into more investments. So my end goal is to be able to build my own properties. I want to be able to build houses, and also
and you mean when you mean like being a builder, like from the ground up?
Yeah, from the ground up.
Like,
so
do you also want to like purchase the land or anything like that?
Yeah, so our first step now is we have some proposal we set up where we're going to be getting into investing. So what we do, we get a bunch of people together that have money they want to get into. So we buy a house like a bungalow, a cheaper house. We renovate it into a newer modern home.
So
and
like
then we sell it.
flipping
house, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're gonna get into flipping properties. That's our first step, and then eventually we're gonna get into buying lands and just building from scratch and selling. And also my main thing in life is that one day I want to be able to give back, especially for those of you that don't know me. I come from a background in Nigeria. I came here when I was about 13 years old. There's a lot of kids back home that that are not privileged to have what we have here. My goal one day is to be able to build some schools back home,
right?
Just do some missionary work. Being able to give back to the poor country, especially from my background where I'm from. I know kids down there. They wish they can learn.
Really use the support,
right?
Yeah.
So my goal is to to be successful enough that I'll be able to build some schools, some churches, and being able to have something in a different country to help kids back there. So that's my main thing. At the end of, I'm working hard. Sometimes money is good. I've seen money, and sometimes I've seen enough money. I'm like, wow, what do I do now, right? So it doesn't necessarily bring happiness all the time. It's good to have it. You want to live a good life, but
I mean, I talk about it too. I always told people when I was chasing money, I could never be happy because as soon as I achieved that goal, whether it was 5, 10, 15, 20 grand, it was still something missing.
Right.
And it's amazing that you brought up the whole Nigerian thing, because I think for me, I look at it like, we came, or we're brought to this country, our parents came, or whatever it was, and we've gained enough knowledge that I think down the line,
right,
5 years, 10 years, 15 years from now, I think it's very important to use our platform, our resources, our position in whatever we are at that point. Maybe, now you got a bigger company.
Right.
And I think it'll be important to go back and put some of that energy back into the country, which is the reason why we are even here today, right? And when we trace back the line, it's not like I've been taking trips back home in the last couple of years, and I go every year.
Right.
And it's something about being in a space where now as a grown adult, I look around, I got grand aunties, great-grandparents.
Right.
I could go to my great-grandfather's house, which his house in Niamey really started the downtown
Wow.
of Niamey. So it's a lot of history there, and I think in some way, shape, or form, it'll be almost unfortunate if now we just, we nothing wrong with Canada. Canada's an amazing country, but I think going back home, and I've even, I spoke to you about this,
we've
about
had a lot of discussions about this,
owning land, and I
Right.
kind of started in Narem, and I don't know, but I think for me, it just to be able to say that I have land back home, and
Right.
and that, like, it's something that never in my lifetime I could envision. I mean, you think about the house parties that we have, right? And I always tell people, listen, like I said, your life is different, mine is different, but it's all about partying is amazing, right? And a lot of time, turn up, Shawty, Ibu, you always turning up. But the problem is people only see one day of the week of
Right.
what I do.
Yeah.
And I think partially it's my fault because this is the part that I was comfortable showing the world.
Right.
Right. Get on the mic and being vulnerable and telling you my deficiencies and some of the things that I learned, and hoping that you find inspiration in that
Right.
and become something better. I think that's where we get on this, and this is the message we're trying to convey.
Right.
So I think for me, and hopefully, and we'll talk about this later on, is like a piece of land back home is, at this point right now as we're speaking, is not that much.
Right.
And if you get in now, maybe, in the 5-10 years, you got a little bit more extra money.
Right.
It'll be good to go back and kind of, like I said, give back to the world from which we've been taken away from for such a long period of time. Honestly, I want to say, thanks, Chef, for coming through.
Yeah, appreciate it for having me. Yeah.
And it's incredible. We haven't talked in a very long time, and today almost, and we just got in. We got on the mic. We didn't really want to talk beforehand. And I was like, "Yo, whatever you're gonna say, we're gonna say it right to the people listening." And it's amazing. And thanks for coming. Like I said, we'll have you to come back. I know, we haven't even gotten into the second business and all that stuff, but like I said, this is our platform,
Right.
And honestly, it's open to everybody. If you have a story to share,
Absolutely.
I'm here to really work with you, and we get into it, and it's just as easy as that. So thank you very much for coming. Now, before I let you go, please let the people know your social media, everything else, where they could get in contact with you. Obviously, if it's not through me, then you could go directly.
Yeah, so for those, so we offer GoldenTouch Painters, Instagram, GoldenTouch Renovations, Instagram, and we have a website as well for those. If you know anyone looking for renovations or painting services, you can also visit our goldentouchreno.ca. But yeah, it's pretty much straightforward. Anything Golden Touch renovation or Golden Touch Painter, you can search it on Google, and you should be able to get it all pulled up from there. Facebook as well. You can like our page, Golden Touch Reno and Golden Touch Painters. I want to thank you guys for listening. I hope our story came,
Yeah, I mean, they definitely was, and remember too, if you do call him through this podcast, make sure you tell him the Activated Podcast send you, so I can get my little 10% check on the side, and you can get a little discount too. Do not go in there without mentioning me, because he gonna hit you. Listen, he's a real professional.
Right.
He's a real professional, so you gotta pay for professionalism. So, this is inspired one of my boy. Before I wrap it up, I would like to also, if you're listening to this and you love what you hear, please subscribe to the YouTube page. It's Activated Podcast, to the Soundcloud Activated Podcast as well, and please go and like my Facebook page, Activated Podcast. And I would try to, that way you're up to up to speed of what's going on anytime the episode is dropping and that sort of stuff. So, like I like to say, if you've been listening to the, you've see, now I'm forgetting what I usually say. But
activated.
Essentially, if you listen to the conversation and you get one thing from it, thanks for tuning in. I'm Ibu, your host, and you've officially been activated. Peace.
Peace.